everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today we are beginning the very first part of our Too Many Bones Undertow playthrough. So just for a brief second, I'm going to interrupt the playthrough to announce we have hit 2 years on Rolling Solo, which is absolutely phenomenal, craziness, and first off, a huge thank you to all of you guys for the support over the last 2 years. It's been phenomenal. I've made a lot of friendships that are going to carry forward into the coming years. I'm really excited for that, and I wanted to say thank you by offering up a chance to win Too Many Bones, seeing as we are beginning an adventure in Undertow. The lucky winner of this Too Many Bones bundle is going to be walking away with a Too Many Bones core experience, the original Too Many Bones, as well as the Undertow expansion and or standalone game, and an Adventure Map 2.0, which is a double-sided adventure map allowing you to use it in both of those core game experiences. This special Too Many Bones bundle for our 2-year celebration is going to have the contest open until March 4th, and that includes the day of March 4th. And then after that, immediately after that, we are going to go ahead and we're going to randomly draw the winner, and that winner is going to have this package being sent their way after confirming their address. So first off, again, a huge thank you to all you guys. Good luck, keep your fingers crossed, and also be on the lookout within the next 2 weeks for a special 2-year anniversary video with potentially another surprise. But for now, let's head back to the Undertow playthrough. We are going up against Nobulous and an Abomination. It's kind of a double tyrant type situation, which is very different than most tyrants in the Too Many Bones universe. So this is one of the stronger and longer campaigns that you have to go after within this Undertow package. So what we have here is we're using Duster as well as Gasket. We set all of this up in a prior video, so if you missed this setup video, you're probably wondering what you're exactly looking at, and that video will fill in all of that for you as to how we got to where we are right now. I'll put a link to that in the video so you can jump back and watch it. There was one catch during that solo setup, which was an awesome one. We're going to correct that right now. So at the very end of the solo setup video, we were trying to find all the skill dice that are actually starting in the skills area of each of the Gearlocs we've chosen. And in order to do that, you go through the reference card for each of the Gearlocs and take a look at all the bullet points next to each skill dice, and anyone that has a circle around it is a die that you get to start the actual game with. So one that I missed, and I want to thank you guys for noting this in the last video because it was the one miss I made during the instructions, was the fact that Gasket, and this is Gasket's reference card you're looking at here at the very bottom of the list, has consumables, and you can see there is a bullet point which is hiding just a little bit underneath the artwork there, and because of that positioning I was unable to see it, plus the fact it was circled in yellow, making it even tougher to notice. But Gasket should start with the power converter. Skill die number 16 for Gasket now rests inside Gasket's skill matrix. So we should begin our journey to take down Nobulous by reading the actual Tyrant card to get a sense of what we're going up against. So Nobulous is the oldest member of the Gearloc Council and, according to him, the oldest Gearloc to ever live. Nobulous Grint has always defied convention, disinterested in the pursuit of fleeting pleasures of present day or century. He's turned his eye to matters of the next millennium and the search for immortality. He does not tolerate council interference and stands in outright defiance of scientific ethics. Rumor suggests this disregard for limits in experimentation is what led to the breaking of Daylor. So at this point, it's very important to re-emphasize the win and loss condition so that we know what our objective is going forward. Let's talk more so about the win condition because we're hoping for that in this playthrough. So obviously we already know about the game length, but in terms of the condition to win, basically we have progress points at the very top there with a 7 inside. We need 7 progress points to even have an attempt at going after Nobulous and taking Nobulous down. We have 10 days to get to Nobulous and to take Nobulous down. So you have to use those two things in conjunction and strategically think about how you can do that to the best of your ability. Now, obviously, the most efficient way would be gaining a progress point every single day. if we have 10 days, and say for instance we gain 1 progress point every day, that gives us the 7 progress points we need by the end of the 7th day, and we can potentially have the 8th, 9th, and 10th to try to take Nobulous down. And yes, if you have additional days, you can spend them retrying to take the Tyrant down. So there is a strategy in trying to get to the Tyrant fast enough. So that is one possible route we could go. The downside of that is if we speed our way through trying to get to Nobulous early, we may not be skilled up enough or leveled up enough to be able to handle Nobulous, and we could risk having multiple encounters that we come up short in and we end up not winning. Or we can kind of beef ourselves up and go in for kind of a last day, last stand type showdown. So in other words, we gain 9 or even more progress points than we really need to, but at the same time we're gaining training points which allow us to upgrade our characters, and then we go in on like the 9th or 8th or 10th day and try to take Nobulous down, but we're a little bit more leveled up and prepared for the battle. So there is a balance there of what is the best to do. It also hinges on which Gearlocs you're using. It also hinges on how successful you were with your encounters along the way. All of this is up in the air because we don't know what we're going to run into, and that's part of the journey. You just kind of figure it out as you go, and then you have to shift your strategy as to how things are panning out for you. But that's the general gist. We've got 10 days to get to Nobulous, and we need 7 progress points to actually encounter and try to defeat him. The next major decision you need to make is what difficulty level you'd like to choose. We can have Adventure, Heroic Adventure, or Legendary. To sum this up very quickly, because you can read these 3 on the screen, Adventure is the easiest, Legendary is the hardest. Legendary basically gives you nothing, so you're playing Too Many Bones straight up, which is how I played in my prior playthrough when we went up against Drellin with patches, and I had incredible rolls, and I still to this day could not recreate that playthrough even if I tried. Now, if I went ahead here and chose Legendary for this particular campaign, I'm a little bit more worried as the campaign's a bit longer than the Drellin one. We're going up against Nobulous, and the length of this one is just, like I said, just a bit more. So I don't know if my wonderful lucky dice rolls from the past will follow me into this playthrough or not. Highly unlikely. But what I want to also do is provide an entertaining playthrough, but a challenging one too. So I think the best thing to do is to sit right in the middle. Now, normally off camera, I would just do Legendary, but because we're doing this on camera, I'm going to give, kind of balance between the players that are brand new and have never seen Too Many Bones, and also a balance between the guys and girls that love to play at the Legendary level and see just kind of the insane epicness of just going into it with absolutely no freebies, which is quite fun. So we're going to go ahead and choose Heroic Adventure. So we are going to gain for our Gearlocs 1 additional HP stat for free. Normally you'd use a training point to get those, but we get those right away, so we'll be ticking those right up in a few seconds. And we also gain a training point. So let's give ourselves the extra HP for Duster. So we'll go ahead and grab one of the stat dice, make sure it's on 1. You'll see that Duster starts with 3. I'm putting the 1 in here thanks to choosing Heroic Adventure, and we also get to uptick the health starting out of the gates for Duster. So now Duster will have 4 HP going into day number 1. And let's head over to Gasket to the exact same thing, and then we'll deal with our free training points for each Gearloc. So we'll do the exact same thing over here with Gasket, gaining our extra HP out of the gate. So we take the stat die, and of course you can see there's 4 different stat dice. They correlate to the 4 different slots. They'll be used over time, and I'll talk about how those are actually upgraded, because not all of them are just an instant get. You don't just always get to have them. But in this case, because it specifically states that we just gain the HP, we're throwing them in there, and I'll talk more about which ones are automatic, and health is one of them, or which ones you have to actually roll for and hopefully succeed on that roll in order to train successfully. We'll talk about that difference later on. So for now, we're gaining our 1 extra HP. We don't want to forget to give Gasket that HP. The crazy thing about Gasket is if you take a look on the reference sheet, on the very back of that reference sheet, you'll see a section called Beginner Build Stat. It's up there at the very, very top right. And that section basically specifies that Gasket is very, very weak. And you can kind of see that already. He only has 1 health going out. So one thing that they say to do right from the get-go is get his health up so that he can actually survive. Now, of course, he can roll an insane amount of defense dice, which is great because his defense can keep him alive, but it doesn't take much once the shields are down to knock Gasket down. So more health the better out of the gates if you've never played with Gasket before. And lastly, we're going to go ahead and spend the training point we were given for each of our Gearlocs. We'll start off with Duster. if you're given a training point at any point in time in the game, it's a really good thing. You want as many of those as you possibly can get your hands on, because they not only impact your character in terms of an upgrade, but you have options, and options are always a good thing in Too Many Bones. You have an option to go ahead and train out one of the skill dice that could land in the skills matrix. Of course, it has to start at the beginning of one of the paths, and there's arrows to tell you which direction they go. So you have to start, if I wanted to follow the red path, I'd have to start at Duster's Dagger. This one right here would be Bottled Smoke or Flint and Tinder, but as long as it has a star, I'm available and can successfully use a training point to put a die into one of those slots. And then from that point on, you just have to follow the arrows if you want to continue down through the skill tree. That is the skills matrix area in terms of spending training points. We also have the stat area up here where we have health, dexterity, attack, and defense. The easiest way to remember this is the 2 on the left are automatic. If you want to spend a training point on health, you get it right away. You instantly flip this over to a 2, and now I put an extra health chip underneath of Duster going into the next day, or the first day, I should say. So in this particular case, I don't want to spend it on HP, even though it is recommended to do that. I kind of want to go ahead and pick something from this area, but I'll just continue going through the rest of these stats. So health is automatic, dexterity is automatic, and dexterity is used to tell you how many dice you can roll on a given turn, as well as how much movement you can have. And it really is your choice as to how much movement you want to move on the battle mat over here when you're actually in an encounter, versus how many dice you want to roll. And in combination with the dexterity, you have to take a look at how many attack and defense dice that you have available to roll. So for instance, I have, and it's always built out like this, you typically, in most cases, not all, some Gearlocs are not always even like this, but in this case, Duster has 3 dexterity, so Duster on the turn could sit still and roll 2 attack and 1 defense, and that would suck up the 3 dexterity that Duster has. Or Duster could choose to spend 1 dex on moving on the battle mat and 2 dice on attacking, and that is a total of 3 dex spent. Done. So that's how dexterity is used. That's why it's important, and you'll definitely want to be bumping this up over time. As you fill out your skills matrix, you can't even use skill dice that are in here unless you're using dexterity. Dexterity is used for movement and for any dice you choose to roll, be it attack, defense, or skills that come out of the skills matrix. So that's kind of a rundown of those, and attack and defense are not automatic trains. So if I want to go ahead, in other words, and spend a training point in attack or defense, I have to make successful rolls based on the total number that's there. So I go ahead and I roll dice that are equivalent to what I'm actually trying to upgrade. So if I'm trying to upgrade attack 2, I'm rolling 2 attack dice, and I'm trying to avoid getting any bones on the die. There's a 1 in 6 chance on each die of landing a bone. And for defense, if I wanted to upgrade that right now, I'd be rolling 1 defensive die. And basically, if they handle themselves very similarly, but there's one of them that gives you a reroll. And we'll talk more about that if I choose to go down that path. But as of right now, I'm not going to upgrade my attack or defense. So we're going to go ahead and probably focus on the skills matrix area here. I'm really considering the Bottled Smoke. So it says the Bottled Smoke on your turn allows you to trigger to add an untargetable effect die to yourself. So what that essentially means is I can basically go invisible. It's very thematic. I am basically an assassin, and it's really, really cool because my innate ability is Shadow Dweller, and that innate ability on my actual reference card lets me know that Duster may start on any position on the battle mat. She also starts with Nightshade's initiative die. So I have the initiative die already slotted in here, and of course I get the chip. I've already got that set up, but Nightshade only comes in if Duster is hurt, essentially. So, and that will likely happen. So we're going to go ahead now, and we're going to go ahead and grab that Bottled Smoke die, which is die number 5. And that's what I'm choosing to train. And again, if I'm training anything, as long as there's a star there, I get it automatically. There's no rolling necessary. It's an automatic success. And I'm starting to build out this particular tree of skills, which is considered the Gadgeteer tree for Duster. And you can see that actually on the reference guide for Duster. Each of them are labeled with what the color actually is called. So for Duster, we have Assassin in red, Survivalist in purple, Gadgeteer in orange, and in the light blue is Wolf Sister. So the light blue is actually being able to basically upgrade our Nightshade. So over time, we're going to want to focus on making Nightshade even more useful, and these are the dice that are going to do that. And we also, of course, have consumables, which are always in this yellowish color. All right, so Gasket, I'm really tempted with the training point to just go ahead and bump up his health to 3, but I'm also taking a look at the fact that he doesn't have much attack, and I really like to have Gasket be a little bit more useful on the battlefield in terms of being able to attack. Plus, we got the free health, technically, from choosing Heroic Adventure anyway, so we already got the health we likely need to keep him a little bit more survivable. He also has tons of defense dice that he can roll on his turn, which will then end up in active slots up here that can block damage coming at him, stopping him from actually taking hit points off of his chip. So what I might do is go ahead and try to train attack, and this is a good example where you guys can actually see how this works. So with the attack, it's very vicious. If you want to train an attack, if you get one chance to roll, and if you roll any bones, you fail the training attempt on attack, and then you have to spend that training point somewhere else. You literally can't retry it. Defense allows you to do the reroll twice, but that's it. And then you fail on defense and have to spend it elsewhere. So what we do is we take a look at what the number is that we had starting, which is 1, and then any stat die we actually have in here, which we have none, and we total them up. And we roll that many of that particular type of die. So in this case, it's an attack die, and there's only 1 total, so we're rolling 1 attack die. We'll go over to the dice tray, we'll roll it, and we're going to cross our fingers for no bones. All right, here we go with the roll. Let's see what happens. There we go, that's a success. So no bone was rolled, and there's a 1 in 6 chance of it rolling a bone and failing. So we successfully trained Gasket, and we can go ahead and grab another stat die to represent the extra attack that we just gained, and now I can roll up to 2 attack dice when I'm rolling with Gasket, and his dexterity is incredibly high, which is great. This will make him a little bit more of a nuisance on the battle mat. All right, so we're all trained up and we're looking ready to go here. So the one thing I want to make mention of, guys, is we talked about the win conditions. We know that we need to get to the Tyrant and defeat the Tyrant within 10 days. And we talked about the positive in that once we defeat the Tyrant, we win. How do you lose? Literally, it's very simple. You don't defeat the Tyrant within the allotted amount of days. So essentially, we have up until the 10th day, including the 10th day, to try to take down Nobulous. If we fail on the 10th day, we cannot move into the 11th day, and we essentially lose the campaign. And the moment we've all been waiting for, the beginning of the playthrough. We are ready to go. Everything is set. Our characters are ready. Obendar is cheering us on, and we are going to head out and try to take down Nobulous and make ourselves famous in the city. So first we've grabbed the encounter cover card, and we've also got the encounter deck underneath of it. This is what we built in the solo setup video. We're going to take this cover card off and find out what awaits us. The cover card has been flipped over, and our adventure begins with a special encounter called Your Move. Breathe. Chaos is everywhere. Guards, mechs, chaos, more mechs, and more guards. Deep breath. It's time to move, but nothing could be more dangerous. The nearby surroundings are unknown, but there's a guard just up ahead with his back turned. A quick move and anything he's holding could probably be stolen and put to good use. Maybe a few minutes to get the lay of the land would be beneficial, but the opportunity for extra wares will be lost. Deep breath. Time to move. This encounter card presents us with 2 choices. You can see that by the notation of choice and choice. This right here on the far right hand side of the card is an icon that represents a passive choice, meaning that the choice, regardless of which one we choose in this case, will not result in any of us going to the battle mat for an encounter or bringing baddies out into the field and all that kind of stuff. But what we're actually doing here, because this is one of the special encounters that kind of brings us into the game slowly and kind of starts us off with some choices that can either help us by looking ahead, like finding a lookout perch. So if we happen to do that, we can reveal one baddie or the first baddie from every single baddie stack, which is really helpful because we can see all the baddies that are potentially going to come out into play later on. So it's almost like we're looking over a hill and we're seeing what's on the horizon, and we know thematically it just makes sense. But we also only gain a training point as well if we choose to do this, which actually isn't just an only, it's actually not bad. A training point would allow us to buff up our characters, which is nice. Or we could go the route of the loot if we wanted to, which is another passive ability choice. And in this particular case, for this choice, it says got to pick a pocket or 2, and the guard's pack is embroidered. Lionel Bart is an odd name for an Obendar guard. And so for this particular one, we're literally just going to gain some loot. We don't even even have to do anything. We just simply gain loot. So really at the end of the day with this is a training point better with the lookout of the different baddie stacks and being able to check them. And if we also don't like what we see on the first flip, we can rotate them to the back, and then we have to reveal again in that same stack or stacks and leave them be. So at the end of the day, we'll know for sure, and we can kind of get rid of some troublesome baddies, or we can choose to go after the loot because we're greedy. I'm kind of leaning towards the loot because we're greedy, and we also would gain a loot at the very bottom by successfully doing this encounter. Because these are passive, this is a very easy one. We would gain a progress point right away and another loot, so we'd end up with 3 loot total. And when I say 3 loot total, I literally mean 3 loot per gearlock total, because that symbol for the loot means that each gearlock pulls a loot card. So we're going to really end up with 6 loot, 3 for each of the gearlocks, and I'm really tempted to do that even though I want the training point, but we're going to go for the loot because I want to find out if we can get some really cool items to help us in the upcoming battles we're likely to face. So we're going to go ahead here and resolve the successful encounter because these are both passive choices, so they basically resolve right away. We choose to pickpocket, that's what we're doing, so we're going to gain 2 loot each, and then we're going to resolve the bottom where we gain the progress point and then another loot for each of our gearlocks. So we'll go ahead and draw the first one here for Duster to resolve this first loot icon, and then we'll draw one for Gasket, because remember each gearlock gets one. So the first one we have here is called Loose Wires. It's a single battle card, and it says increase your dex by 1. Place this loot in your prep area to remind you of use. So the prep area, for you guys that are unfamiliar with that, is basically the area of your Gearlocs mat that looks like this. So we'll essentially put it there for now. We're going to move them out of the way later. But you also notice that it says loot to the right of each of the playmats, and technically you keep all of your loot to the right. For this playthrough, because of space and things like that, I'll likely put it to the bottom underneath the playmats, if that's okay. We'll also be keeping trove loot, though, on these sides if we need to, because trove loot actually keeps track of how many locks you've unlocked based on these little nodes. We'll talk about that later on. But loot you can literally obtain and use right away, which is awesome. So we got Loose Wires for Duster, and Gasket receives a Fortunate Discovery. That seems very fortunate. This one is a single use and says select one of your consumable skill dice and place it in its spot on your mat. It is now available for use. That is crazy awesome. So we literally technically, in essence, gained a training point because this card essentially allows us to gain a die, and the die typically is gained through using training points, but we got one through pickpocketing, which is fantastic. So now we're going to go ahead and resolve the second loot icon for our successful encounter, starting with Duster. We got the Malfunctioning Mech. It's a single-use item, and this item states that you increase your dex by 2 for this turn. If you reduce the HP of a mech this turn, this loot is not discarded and may be used again. Oh, that's really cool. So as long as I'm using that in the correct way against the correct type of enemy by reducing that enemy's health, that is awesome. I can hold on to this for the long term, and extra dex is huge. So there we go. We've got 2 loot on Duster. Let's find out what Gasket pickpocketed. Gasket got the Platted Skull, and this thing says it has 3 uses. At the start of a round, you may place a 1 defense die in an active slot. That's pretty cool. So that's definitely good, although with Gasket having the ability to roll up to 4 defensive dice, this might be a card that's worth trading to Duster at some point to give Duster the ability to get defense dice, whereas Gasket is already extremely strong in that category. So this could be a really useful item or loot card for Duster. We'll talk more about how we can trade and things like that later on. So we're continuing on through. We've dealt with all of this. If you're interested in knowing what these little symbols are above each choice, they kind of look like a tuft of grass. It basically just means that essentially the encounter is being done on land. So we're not on sea just yet, even though the back in the encounter card kind of makes it seem like you've just jumped into the river. If we headed back to our adventure map, you would see the very first day is actually on land. We're just outside of Obendar, the city. So this is a land encounter. If it ever happens to be water, or there's multiple choices between land or water, you might want to make a decision based on what kind of terrain you want to be dealing with, right? You might have loot that's good or better for one type of terrain than the other, or maybe some particular piece of loot doesn't even work unless you're on water or something along those lines. So that is going to be the resolving of that encounter. We move down to the bottom, we gain the progress point, and simply what we do is we're going to go ahead over the adventure map and move our bead further along the trail as we head closer to Nobulous. And we also gain another loot, and this again is 1 loot per Gearloc, so we'll pull one for Duster. And are you serious? We got another fortunate discovery for Duster. Now, when I say another, I meant another one of those cards, because Gasket got the last one. So that's pretty awesome. So I'm going to get a consumable die for each of these guys out of the gates, which is cool. And here's the next one. The next card for a Gasket is the Sibron Kelp, and it's single use. It says fully heal yourself if currently at 1 HP, otherwise heal for 2. That is a perfect card for Gasket, seeing as his health is so low. These were phenomenal loot cards. Now, one thing to note, guys, there is a limit to how much loot you can have. You can have up to 4 loot cards per Gearloc. So in essence, I could, when I am given the choice at some point here, go ahead and hand this plated skull, which gives me defense dice, hand it over to Duster, and Duster could actually carry it. She'd be able to do that no problem and have the 4 loot cards. So I might end up doing that. We'll see how it goes. I want to show you guys the overall flow of what a typical day looks like, because we're really coming to the close of the first day, and you might be wondering how the phases are broken up. So first off, your adventure routine on your Gearloc Adventuring Reference Guide has it all laid out in a flowchart. Starts off with a new day, turn day counter. So the first thing you're going to do at the beginning of the new day is turn the day counter, which is on the adventure map. However, if you are starting off your campaign, you're already on day number 1. There is no 0, so there's no need to turn that on the first day. So that's why I did not do that. Next, you flow into the new encounter. So you draw an encounter like we did. We resolve it. We choose how it goes, and if it's passive or peaceful, or if it results in a battle, we do that, and then we end up determining was it successful. It was successful. So then we move to the next piece, which is coming down here to divide spoils and apply training points, which we have done. And log process. So at this point, logging the process is then going to the adventure map and moving that glass bead along the track, or just putting the encounter card progress point up near the tyrant card if you don't have the adventure map. Now, the trail goes off in a different direction if you fail your encounter. If you fail your encounter, you just move straight to recovery, because obviously you get no spoils, you don't get any to apply any training points, and you don't get to log any process because you didn't actually successfully gain anything. But you move to the recovery phase nonetheless, where there's lot picking, loot trading, and individual options, which we're going to get into next, and then you wrap around to start a new day, and that is the general start to finish of each day in Daylore. So we are now going to log our process by moving the bead along the track from Obendar, where we were, along the land, and right to the shoreline. So now we're officially moving into the recovery phase, and at the end of each day, after your encounter has been resolved, whether you actually successfully resolved it or you failed, your party enters a recovery phase either way, and it can be done in any order. These options I'm going to go through right now. So the first thing you can do is trade loot within your party, any amount of loot, and to anybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade the plated skull, and I think I called it the platted skull when I picked it up for some weird reason, but I'm going to go ahead and trade this from Gasket over to Duster, putting Duster at, she will have 4 loot cards, which is her max she can carry, so that's okay. And then it looks like Gasket will end up with just 2 loot cards. Another thing you can do during the recovery phase, in addition to trading loot within the party, is to try to unlock trove loot. So trove loot usually has 3 locks involved, and if a particular Gearloc has the trove loot, that Gearloc can go ahead and try to make a lock picking attempt against it. But the really cool aspect of this is that even Gearlocs that don't have trove loot can actually try to make a lock picking attempt on another Gearloc's trove loot card to help them in opening it. So you can, as a team, you're essentially trying to get the thing unlocked faster, which is pretty awesome. So definitely something to do in terms of cooperative play in trying to break into that trove loot and get something extremely useful. And then the third and final option within the recovery phase is an individual option. And this is specific to each Gearloc. You can may choose one of the following. You can choose to rest and recover, which allows you to bring all the HP back that you don't have anymore after a battle. So for instance, if we went into an encounter in the last day, which the first day was very easy, it was a passive encounter or a peaceful encounter, so we got through it easily without any damage. If we had have taken some damage and left the battle mat with, say, 1 health, we could choose as our individual option for Duster to have her go ahead and boom, heal right back up to full HP, whatever matches her health stat. That is one of the options within the individual options. The next option that they can choose instead of resting or recovering is they could choose to search for better loot. So for instance, Duster could decide, I want to discard one of these loots that I have because I have 4 of them and this one isn't useful to me. And if you decide to go ahead and do that, you roll 6 attack dice, and for every bone you roll, again knowing that it's a 1 in 6 chance to roll those, you get to reveal a loot card and you end up keeping 1. So if you just happen to roll 1 bone, you kind of have to keep that one. If you roll 2 bones, you get a choice. So there's a risk reward there for taking a loot card you have that you think might be useless or not very useful and try to upgrade it potentially if you get lucky. And the last option that you can choose in the individual options is scouting the area. And on this particular action, you're going to go ahead and roll a d6, and on a 1 to 3, you reveal a 1-point baddie. If you roll a 4 or 5, you can reveal up to a 5-point baddie, which means you could reveal a 1 or a 5. And if you land a 6, you can reveal up to a 20. So you could choose to take a look at one of the nastier monsters or baddies coming down the lane, or you could decide to downgrade to a 5 or 1. So basically landing the 6 gives you many more options than rolling anything lower. So the options here in this case, because we're on the first day, are very easy. We have no reason to go ahead and do any type of resting and recovering because our whole Gearlocs are healthy, full HP right now, so we don't want to take that individual option. We also don't want to try searching for better loot. We actually got a lot of really good loot, and I'm pretty happy with it. I don't really want to risk losing any of it just yet, but I really like the idea of scouting the area because it allows us to do what we essentially turned down doing in this first encounter, which allows us to go ahead and take a look at the baddie chips and maybe see what's coming down the pipes. So we take this d6, we're starting with Duster, and we're going to roll and find out how much of a good scouting job Duster does. Look at that, we landed a 6, so we can reveal up to a 20-point baddie. And you know what? Because we're crazy and it would be really useful to actually see something that we may not see for a while, 20-point baddies likely won't come out until like the 4th or 5th day, maybe the 3rd in some cases, but usually not. It's still kind of cool to be able to see one of those guys coming down the pipes, and we may never roll another 6 again. So I'm going to go ahead and reveal a 20-point baddie. All right, so here are our baddie stacks, and we're gonna go ahead and grab the 20 on the top and see what we got. We revealed, it appears to be an enormous gorilla with bleed, dodge, 4 attack dice, 2 defense, 9 health, and a 4 initiative. It also looks like it has 2 footprints, so that thing can move diagonally, which is dangerous. It also goes after and targets the strongest character, denoted by the flexing arms in the bottom portion of the token. So Duster's individual option has been chosen. She is done. It's complete. She rolled fantastically. We got a 6. And what's really cool with this is the fact that we may not roll a 6 on that scout in the future again, so it's nice to just know what the nasty baddie we have coming down the pipes is. And it's just thematically cool to know, like, we've hit the edge of the shore, Duster's looking around and sees a gorilla down the river and just knows that this gorilla is going to eventually cause problems for us, but we just don't know when. And so that is Duster's individual option completed. And again, the other reason why I was happy to take a 20 rather than a 5 or a 1 on that scout was because I know Gasket's next, and we're going to be scouting again because I don't want to heal with Gasket, and I don't want to trade in any loot to try to get better loot at this point. So Gasket is going to roll a d6 as well. Oh my goodness, we got another 6. So much for not getting... You know what? I take it back. We should have tried to do legendary mode for difficulty because it appears the dice are with us from the beginning. So in this particular case, now it makes kind of maybe no sense to go ahead and take a look at another 20-point baddie. I think what I'll do is make use of this in a way that will actually help us. So let's take a look at a 1-point baddie in this case, because at least we know the 1-point baddies will actually be out in the first battle that we deal with. So Gasket has successfully scouted from the shorelines just before we're about to get onto the raft and to see what happens out in the wilds of the river. And we're going to take a look just out into the distance at a 1-point baddie, and we see a timid Geophage, if I'm saying that correctly, or Geophage. I'm not sure how to actually pronounce that one. That's a little bit strange. This one is a 6 health in terms of taking it down, 2 initiative. It goes after the weakest Gearloc when it attacks. It's a melee baddie. It also rolls 1 defense. So we know that this is one of the creatures we're going to encounter in the near future. And that is going to conclude day number 1 in Obendar on our journey. We are now moving into day number 2. So the first thing we do is move the counter in the top right of the adventure map to denote we are on the 2nd day. All right, so we're going to turn the dial to 2 at the very top. We're going into the 2nd day, and now we move into the next encounter. Just before we go ahead and reveal the 2nd day encounter, I want to make mention for people that do not have the adventure map, in order to keep track of the adventure map of the progress points, you can also just slide the encounter card that's successful underneath Nobulous or whatever tyrant you're going after in order to keep track of progress points, as they're always in the bottom of the card, so you can just list them out underneath your tyrant card. And now we move to the encounter phase, where we still have a special encounter as we're on day number 2, settling into our adventure. Now that the Obendar is safely in the pass, thoughts turn to the task of building a raft to navigate the Sibron. Chopping down trees is tiring splinter getting work, but the sounds of loud quarreling nearby reveal a simpler option. A group of unsuspecting barbarians with piles of stolen resources strewn about their camp. Brick, lumber, grain, ore, and wool. So much wool. At the moment, the entire group is puzzling over how to build a catapult from 2 wood and 3 brick. Taking on the whole group is doable, but perhaps a little tough. If we make some noises from the tree line, maybe we can lure a few of them away in search for a robber who might steal from their stash at random. All right, and this is where we have a choice. 2 choices, in fact. The top one here is going to be a battle. You can see this is the first time we've seen the battle icon on any of the cards. We've only ever seen the passive or the peaceful resolution. In this particular case, regardless of what we choose, we are going to fight. The cool thing with this, though, is that there are training points to be had if we're successful on either of the choices we choose. We also gain a progress point, which is great. Depending on which of the 2 we get a choice, one of them has a greater benefit than the other, but the other one that doesn't have the loot benefit has the benefit of subtracting the total number of baddie points that we have to queue up, which would be 4 for this particular battle, and bring it down to 3, making it so that only 3 enemies would be joining in on this battle. And just so that everyone's fully aware, this would be a land battle. As you can see the land icon on either of them, there's no water battle going on here. Because if it was a water battle, things would be a little bit different. But in this particular case, we have a choice, and this is exactly where I'm going to stop this particular episode, and we'll continue in this type of manner as we go through the campaign. What I plan to do is to stop in between rounds when we get to encounters and throw these choices back to you guys. I really want to know, what do you think we should do in these situations? Because as we go along, those choices really do matter. And I'm going to keep tally of the votes of which way we should go, and then we're going to go ahead and forward with it. Now, in each video, we may keep them to 1-day videos so that they're very short, so that you can basically just consume them quickly, and we can also come back to you for feedback on what to do next, or I might do 2 days per video. So let me know in the comments below, would you prefer to be involved in every single encounter as we go throughout the adventure? Because I do think that would actually be really interactive and a lot of fun. Or would you rather be involved in every 2nd day encounter? So thank you guys so much for watching. This one obviously had a lot more rules explanation involved, as we're getting people up to speed that have never played the game before. But I promise you, once we get past the first battle, everyone will have a better sense of most aspects of the game, and the rules explanations will begin to dwindle, and I will stop any repeating of myself as we move forward. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.